My parents didn't just cross a line. They bulldozed straight through my life and expected me to thank them for it. One night they called, voices trembling with excitement, telling me they'd sold the family home and handed all $650,000 0 cents to my brother. Then calmly announced they'd be moving into my rental property. When I refused to evict my tenants, they showed up with suitcases, pounding on the door like squatters claiming territory. That moment changed everything, and what I did next shattered their expectations forever. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. My name is Nora, and before everything unraveled, my life looked deceptively simple from the outside. Steady, disciplined, quiet, the kind of life that doesn't get headlines but is built carefully, stubbornly, piece by determined piece. For 8 years, I ran my interior design and custom furniture studio out of a converted garage behind our home in Highlands Ranch. Every morning started the same way. Hair pulled back, linen shirt rolled at the sleeves, leather apron strapped on, the sounds of sanding blocks and saw blades filling the air long before most people even poured their first cup of coffee. My workshop smelled of cedar oil, varnish, and the warm hume of possibility. My own sanctuary carved out of decades of being overlooked. People often underestimate a woman with a craft. They see the calluses before they see the competence, the sawdust before the skill. But those hands fed me, built my business, built my life. And that life, my own life, was something I fought for. Because long before the night my parents tried to walk into my rental property like it was theirs, long before they forced a confrontation I couldn't avoid, there was a quiet accumulation of choices. Their choices, mine. A history of imbalance, always tilting in one direction. Derek, my older brother, the only son, was the axis everything in our family revolved around. It wasn't said outright, but it didn't have to be. The favoritism was woven into every memory of childhood. Derek got the new bike. I got the refurbished one from a neighbor. Derek got summer camps that cost more than my entire school year. I was told to be understanding. Derek's textbooks, his car insurance, his dorm room decor, all funded without hesitation. And when college came for me, "You're resourceful," Mom said, with a proud smile, as if sending me into adulthood with barely enough to survive was an act of empowerment. I worked 3 part-time jobs, juggled classes, and lived off ramen so cheap it didn't even come with flavor packets. Derek, on the other hand, floated through college like it was an all-inclusive cruise. Their money, his convenience. My work, my responsibility. That dynamic embedded itself into my bones. I became the daughter who handled things, the one who didn't complain, the one expected to adjust, to sacrifice, to absorb impact like emotional bubble wrap. Somewhere along the way, I learned to stop expecting fairness, and so, when I finally carved out my adult life, a stable business, a loving husband, a cozy home, a baby on the way, it felt like a miracle I had built entirely on my own terms. Ethan, my husband, grounded me in ways I didn't know I needed. He saw me, the real me, not the version shaped by guilt and obligation. He'd walk into the workshop in the evenings, kiss the back of my neck, and say, "When you're here, you look like you're breathing." And he was right. That space was the first place in my life where no one demanded anything of me. We bought a small home with soft morning light and a wide porch perfect for coffee and slow conversation. And in the corner of the house sat a room we were turning into a nursery. The first room I'd ever designed that made me cry simply by looking at it. Motherhood, a family of my own, a future untouched by the chaos I grew up with. The rental property in Lakewood was a part of that future too. My investment, purchased with years of savings. Jake and Amanda lived there, a young couple trying to stabilize their lives. They always paid on time. They kept the yard better than I ever could. They were respectful, responsible, and grateful, the kind of tenants you wanted to protect, not uproot. Which is why, when my parents called me that afternoon, the call that detonated everything, I had no reason to suspect the ground beneath me was about to tilt again. Mom's voice was bubbling with excitement, breathless, almost girlish. "Honey, we finally sold the house," she said. My heart squeezed. That house held 30 years of memories. The porch swing Dad built, the backyard where Derek and I played, the living room where every Christmas happened. I pictured them downsizing into something cozy, something peaceful. "That's great," I said warmly. "So where are you moving to?" The pause that followed was sharp, artificial, calculated. "Oh, well, we gave all the money to Derek," she said lightly, as if she were announcing the weather. $650,000. Isn't that wonderful?" I didn't respond, not because I was speechless, but because I was waiting for the part where she laughed or explained or corrected herself. But she kept talking. Voice bright and oblivious, listing features of the penthouse Derek had found downtown. My head buzzed with 100 questions, but I didn't ask any, because I already knew the answers. Derek needed, Derek deserved. Derek was the center of their universe. And then, like she was discussing a casual favor, Mom added, "We'll be moving into your rental for a while. Just tell those tenants to leave." That was the moment something inside me cracked, not from shock, but from recognition. They weren't asking, they weren't even announcing, they were informing me of the next expectation, the next sacrifice I was supposed to make, the next part of my life they assumed belonged to them. I don't remember my exact response, but I know it was calm. Too calm. Something bland like, "I'll think about it," or "We'll talk later," because my brain had disconnected, protecting me the way it always did when their entitlement became too large to absorb. When I told Ethan that night, he wasn't surprised, but he was furious on my behalf. He stood at the counter, jaw tightening. "You're not evicting Jake and Amanda," he said firmly. "It's illegal. It's wrong, and it's not your responsibility." "Of course not," I said, the words coming out automatically, but deep inside a familiar dread curled tight, because boundaries meant nothing to my parents. They didn't see boundaries, they saw obstacles. They'd step over them the same way they always stepped over me, simply because they could. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the old version of myself creeping back. The daughter raised to cave, to bend, to fold myself small for the sake of keeping everyone else comfortable. But this time life was different. I had a home, a husband, a child on the way. And what I didn't know yet, what I was about to learn, was that protecting this life would push me further than I had ever been pushed. And this time, I would not break. I would not bend. I would not be understanding, not anymore. The next morning, my phone lit up before the sun even rose. At first, I thought it was an emergency, something serious, something urgent. But no, it was my mother, and the voicemail she left was dripping with the same sugary, fragile tone she always used right before asking for something entirely unreasonable. "Nora, honey, you sounded stressed yesterday," she began, as if my stress had been an inconvenience to her. "We just need somewhere to stay for a little while. You know how hard things have been." Hard? Hard was working 3 jobs in college while Derek slept until noon and had his tuition wired automatically. Hard was spending $2,000, 0 cents on prenatal vitamins, doctor visits, and ultrasounds, while my parents handed my brother $650,000, 0 cents, like it was pocket change. Hard was building my own business from scratch while being told girls don't need as much help. But their version of hard never included their own poor decisions. By noon, Dad called. His voice carried the weight of authority, disappointment, and that old familiar angle of blame. "Your mother is upset," he said sternly. "You should fix this. Fix this. Fix them. Fix Derek. Fix everything they broke but refused to acknowledge." That had always been my role. But that morning, the words slid off me like water off oiled wood. "The tenants have a legal lease," I said evenly. "I can't remove them." "You won't," Dad snapped. "Not can't, won't." I wasn't sure whether the sting in my chest came from anger or exhaustion. Maybe both, because while my father insisted I was being selfish, inconsiderate, dramatic, he refused to acknowledge a simple truth. Their chaos wasn't my responsibility. Never had been, never would be. But the pressure didn't stop there. By evening, the entire extended family had somehow been notified, and Patricia called first. "After everything your parents have done for you," she scolded, "you can't do one little thing?" "Evicting tenants is not little," I said calmly. "It's illegal." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You're exaggerating." Of course I was. Everyone in my family had a PhD in denial and a master's in minimization. Their strategy was always the same: guilt, dismiss, pressure, repeat. And then Derek texted. "They need somewhere to stay," he wrote. "Be flexible, sis." Flexible. That word had been used to twist my spine into knots since childhood. Flexible meant bending until I broke. Flexible meant sacrificing your peace so others could remain comfortable. Flexible meant ignoring your own needs because someone else's poor planning had become your emergency. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I finally realized they didn't want to hear me anyway. The real shock hit 3 days later. I was sanding a maple shelf in my workshop when my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. Jake's name flashed across the screen. When I picked up, his voice was trembling. "Nora?" "There are people at the door," he said. "They're saying they're moving in. They have suitcases. They're yelling." Every muscle in my body went rigid. "Describe them," I said, already knowing. "Older couple. They said they're your parents." For a brief moment, I didn't breathe. 'Cause I knew they would escalate. Knew they'd twist my silence into permission. Knew they would push until I snapped, the way I always had. But I never thought they would show up uninvited, suitcases in hand, pounding on a door that wasn't theirs. "Don't open it," I told him. "I'm on my way." I grabbed my keys with sawdust still clinging to my jeans and drove like the steering wheel was a lifeline. By the time I turned onto the Lakewood street, I saw them instantly, my parents on the porch, with 2 large suitcases, grocery bags dangling from Mom's wrists like they were checking into a vacation rental. Mom was pounding on the door so hard the house shook. Dad stood stiffly beside her, jaw set, eyes sharp. They looked like 2 people having a meltdown in the produce aisle because the store ran out of their favorite fruit. I slammed the car door. "What are you doing?" I called out, walking toward them. Mom spun around, eyes wide with indignation. "They won't let us in," she exclaimed as if she was the victim. "They're acting like criminals." "It's not your house," I said, keeping my voice steady even though I felt something cracking inside me. "It's family property," she insisted. "We have every right to be here." "No, you don't," I said. But she didn't hear me. Not really, because she wasn't listening. She was demanding. Dad stepped forward. "We've been in a hotel for almost 2 weeks," he said, voice dripping with accusation. "We've been waiting for you to handle this." Handle this. Meaning, fix our mistake. Fix Derek's mistake. Fix everything. When I didn't respond, Mom's voice wavered, shifting into that wounded tone I'd heard my entire life. "How can you talk to us this way after everything we've done for you?" Jake cracked the door open an inch. "Do I need to call someone?" he whispered. "No," I said calmly. Then I looked directly at my parents. "But they will, if you don't leave." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Dad's eyes darkened. Mom's mouth fell open in horror, and in that moment I saw it clearly. They weren't confused. They weren't desperate. They were entitled. Entitled to my money, my time, my property, my life. They left, only because Jake picked up his phone like he was about to dial. Dad muttered, "This isn't over." Mom cried, loudly, theatrically, dramatically, the kind of crying meant to draw sympathy from neighbors who didn't know the truth. They dragged their suitcases back to the car, shaking their heads like grieving martyrs. As I watched them drive off, something settled in my chest. A cold, steady ache. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was the realization that for the first time in my life, they had no control, and they were furious about it. The silence that followed their retreat should have brought relief, but it only made the next 24 hours feel heavier, like the quiet before a storm you can smell before you see. My phone buzzed nonstop the next morning, dozens of notifications lighting up my screen before I even rolled out of bed. At first I thought it was spam or work requests, but no, it was family, a wall of accusations, each message more dramatic and self-righteous than the last. "I can't believe you would abandon your parents like this," Brandon wrote. "They gave your brother everything to give him a chance, and you can't give them one roof," Aunt Patricia chimed in minutes later. "They told us you refused to let them into the house you own. Honestly, Nora, they're practically homeless." Homeless. That was the word they chose. Not irresponsible, not reckless, not financially reckless enough to hand their entire life savings to Derek without a second thought. No. They were homeless, and I was apparently the villain in their dramatic retelling. My chest tightened as I read the messages. Dozens of them, all coming from relatives who hadn't checked in on me once during this entire pregnancy. People who didn't know my due date, my doctor's name, or even where I lived, but now suddenly cared deeply about morality. Ethan found me sitting at the kitchen counter, phone in hand, expression heavy. "You can block them," he said gently as he poured coffee. "You don't owe them access to your mental space." "I know," I murmured, "but blocking them wouldn't fix the root of the issue." My parents weren't just guilting me. They weren't just being dramatic. They were campaigning, twisting the narrative, reshaping facts, and recruiting allies. And they were very, very good at it. They always had been. That was the part that stung the deepest. I had spent my entire childhood being told to be understanding, while they bulldozed right over me. They didn't want boundaries, they wanted obedience. And for the first time in my life, they weren't getting it. That was when the second wave of chaos hit. A text from my cousin Maria, the only person in the family who didn't immediately throw stones. "You should know something," she wrote. "Derek tried to buy a penthouse with your parents' money. The bank rejected his mortgage. He doesn't qualify. He doesn't have the income. Without the loan, he can't close. And your parents, they're panicking." Suddenly, everything made sense. The urgency, the entitlement, the sudden need to move into my rental property. My parents weren't homeless. They were financially drowning because they had willingly jumped into the ocean with bricks tied to their ankles. They handed Derek $650,000, 0 cents. And Derek? Derek had squandered it, or at the very least, bet all of it on a future he didn't have the income to secure. I shouldn't have felt anything for them. I shouldn't have felt pity. But part of me, the old part, the conditioned part, ached anyway. But that ache lasted only until Derek called that afternoon. His voice grated with entitlement and condescension, as if he was doing me a favor by speaking to me. "Hey," he said casually, "things are a little tight right now. Brittany and I still need to pay the venue. It's only $18,000, 0 cents. Can you help?" Only $18,000, 0 cents. Only, as if that was a normal request between siblings, as if I didn't own a business, have a mortgage, carry expenses, and have a baby on the way. "No," I said simply. "Come on, Nora," he groaned. "Don't be difficult." I said no. He scoffed. "Wow, real supportive, sis." "Your wedding is not my responsibility," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Neither are Mom and Dad's decisions. They gave me everything to build my future," he snapped. "And you can't even give them a place to stay?" "They didn't give me anything," I said quietly. Ever. Silence, not the reflective kind, no. This was the stunned, offended silence of a man who had never been told no in his life. "You're going to regret this," he hissed, and he hung up. I stared at my phone, pulse steady, breathing slow. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. What I felt was something cleaner, sharper, like a blade cutting through decades of manipulation. Later, that night, After the house finally quieted and Ethan went to bed, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My inbox was flooded with guilt messages, false narratives, dramatic pleas, and stories conveniently rewritten to paint me as the villain. Enough. I opened a new email and began writing, not emotionally, not angrily, but factually. A clean timeline. Every detail, every action, every lie, every truth. Screenshots of the lease, documentation of the legal protections, a breakdown of their choices, their $650,000 gift, their refusal to plan, their attempt to coerce me into breaking the law, their unannounced arrival at the rental property, their harassment, their trespassing, their manipulation. And at the end, I wrote one final line: if anyone believes my parents deserve housing more than my tenants, please let me know when they can move in with you. Then I hit send. 30 relatives received it. 30 people who had opinions without facts. 30 people who thought guilt was enough to control me. By the next morning, the family chat was silent. Not one response. Not one accusation. Not one defense. Entitlement dies quickly when exposed to documentation. Ethan walked into the kitchen and kissed the top of my head. "Proud of you," he murmured. But it wasn't pride I felt. It was grief. Grief for the daughter who tried so hard to earn approval that was never hers to begin with. Grief for the little girl who believed love required sacrifice. Grief for the woman who spent her life proving her worth to people who never bothered to see it. But beneath the grief, something else grew. Strength. The kind that doesn't shout or tremble, just stand. And I realized something quietly powerful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one afraid of losing them. They were afraid of losing control of me. The silence after my email didn't last long, because silence in my family is never peace. It's plotting, it's regrouping, it's the moment a wave pulls back before it crashes harder. 2 days passed without a single call from my parents, Derek, or the swarm of relatives who had been attacking me just 48 hours earlier. For most people, that would feel like relief. For me, it felt like the tight stillness before a fault line snap. Ethan felt it too, I could tell by the way he hovered more, checked the Ring app twice as often, and kept glancing at me with that soft concern he tried not to make obvious. I appreciated it. I also hated that it was necessary. On the third day, it happened. Saturday morning. Sunlight warm, coffee brewing, the kind of quiet that makes you believe things might finally be settling. Ethan and I were sitting at the kitchen island arguing over baby names. Names that made us laugh, names we'd vetoed, names we loved for 5 minutes before changing our minds. For a moment, it felt like a normal couple's morning, a real one, a peaceful one. Then the doorbell rang. Once, then twice, then again, rapid, insistent, the kind of knocking that vibrates down your spine. Ethan stood and walked toward the window, then froze. "Nora," he said quietly, "it's them." My stomach clenched instantly. I opened the Ring camera, and there they were, my parents, standing on my porch like they lived here. Mom dressed like she was attending a brunch. Pearls, pastel sweater, hair curled. Dad in his pressed shirt, jaw set, holding a grocery bag. Mom clutched a bouquet of flowers in one hand, a peace offering that somehow felt more like bait. She leaned toward the camera, smiling with exaggerated warmth. "Sweetheart, we brought ingredients for your favorite pot roast," she said, her voice trembling in a rehearsed, dramatic way. "There, let us in?" Ethan whispered, "They're not here to apologize." I nodded. "I know." My mother's smile faltered when I didn't respond immediately. Dad cleared his throat and stepped forward. "We've had time to reflect," he began stiffly. "We made mistakes. Let's just talk like adults." Talk like adults? I almost laughed. That was his phrase. He used it every time he wanted to bulldoze a boundary while pretending it was reasonable. Growing up, talk like adults meant listen while I lecture you. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't speak into the mic. I didn't offer anything. I just watched. Mom's smile tightened. Honey, she continued, her voice cracking with expertly placed vulnerability, we've been staying somewhere awful. We're tired. We miss you. It was the kind of guilt that had worked my entire childhood, but something in me didn't shift or break or soften this time. It stayed still, solid. Dad's face hardened when I didn't react. Nora, he snapped suddenly, this is childish. Open the door. Ethan whispered, there it is. The mask had slipped. Mom's expression twisted instantly, her voice rising. We are your parents, she said, louder this time. We deserve respect. Respect. That word again, the weapon disguised as virtue. They didn't want respect, they wanted compliance. When neither of us moved, Dad took a step even closer to the camera. If you don't let us in, we will stay here until you do, he warned. You cannot ignore us forever. My pulse didn't spike, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't 12 anymore, shrinking under their disappointment. I was a homeowner, a business owner, a woman with a child on the way, a woman who had drawn a boundary and had no intention of erasing it. I opened my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. Nora, think about the baby, Mom suddenly cried out, as if the mention of my pregnancy would magically erase the last 5 weeks of coercion, pressure, guilt, harassment, and trespassing. Dad pounded the door once with his fist. Stop being dramatic, he barked. Dramatic! The irony was almost poetic. I gave the operator my address and said the words I never thought I'd say about my own parents. I need to report ongoing trespassing, I said. Same individuals as a previous incident at my rental property. The operator was calm, professional. Officers are on their way. Outside, my parents were still talking, still demanding, still insisting they deserved access to my life, my home, my resources, the things I'd built, alone. Ethan squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, he murmured. This is hard. He was right. It was. But it was necessary. 10 minutes later, the patrol car turned onto our street. My parents' heads snapped toward it, and Mom's face collapsed into exaggerated panic. Dad puffed up, offended, like he'd been wronged. The officer approached slowly and professionally. Ma'am, sir, he said firmly, the homeowner has requested you leave the property. Mom clutched her chest. We're her parents. That's not relevant, the officer replied. You need to leave, now. Dad pointed toward the door. He's confused, he insisted. She doesn't understand. Ethan stepped into the frame behind me, his voice steady and clear. She understands perfectly. She said no, respect it. The officer repeated the order. My parents finally stepped back. Mom was crying, not sad tears, no, strategic tears. Dad glared at the camera with an anger he didn't bother hiding. You'll regret this, Nora, he said coldly. It didn't land the way he expected. It didn't shake me. It didn't cut. It only confirmed exactly why I needed this boundary in the first place. They left in a dramatic flurry, dragging their suitcases back toward the car like wronged royalty. The patrol car followed until they exited the neighborhood. When the street grew quiet again, Ethan turned to me. You okay? He asked softly. I exhaled slowly. I think, I said. I'm finally becoming okay. But the day wasn't over. Chaos doesn't leave quietly, not in this family, not ever. 3 hours later, my phone lit up with Derek's name. I hesitated. Ethan whispered, you don't have to answer. But I did. I needed closure. What did you do? Derek barked immediately. Mom is hysterical. Dad is furious. You called the cops on our parents? They trespassed, I said calmly. They refused to leave. They're family, he screamed. And you humiliated them. They created the situation, I said. I enforced the boundary, he scoffed. You're unbelievable. Derek, I said quietly, I'm done being your safety net. Silence. Then his voice dropped into a venomous hiss. "You're going to pay for this." I hung up. Not with fear, not with sadness, with certainty. And later that evening, I opened my inbox to one new email from an attorney. My attorney. A cease and desist letter drafted with precision. Trespass again and legal action will follow. I forwarded it to my parents with no explanation. No commentary, no emotion, a boundary in writing, irrefutable. The next morning, Maria texted me this. "Your parents went pale reading the letter. They're stunned, speechless." It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like the end of something I'd been trying to save for too long and the beginning of something I should have given myself years ago. Peace and the right to protect the life I'm building and the child I'm about to bring into it. For the first time in weeks, the house fell quiet after Derek's call. Quiet, but not peaceful. It was the thick kind of quiet, the kind that settles into corners and waits because it knows the storm isn't over. I sat at the dining table, fingertips pressed against my mug, staring at the slow swirl of steam rising from the coffee I wasn't drinking. The words from Derek's call replayed in loops. "You're going to pay for this." It wasn't a threat. It was a prophecy. Because in our family, consequences weren't lessons, they were punishments, and I knew my parents weren't done. They never accepted boundaries as answers. They accepted them as challenges. Ethan touched my shoulder gently. "Come outside with me," he said. "We need air." I followed him onto the porch, the late afternoon light softening over the yard. The breeze was calm, soothing, but my mind was anything but. "You know what's coming next, right?" Ethan said quietly. I nodded. "The smear campaign." "Yep." "They're cornered. When cornered people don't self-reflect, they attack." He wasn't wrong. My family didn't apologize, didn't regroup, didn't accept responsibility. They redirected blame like it was an inherited skill. And right on cue, my phone buzzed. One message from Aunt Patricia. "You should be ashamed for what you did today." I showed Ethan. He nodded grimly. Another message from cousin Brandon. "Your parents are devastated. You owe them an apology." Then another. "You're heartless, Nora." Then another. "You're abandoning your family." Then another. "How can you do this while pregnant?" The irony nearly made me laugh. The same relatives who never checked on my pregnancy now weaponizing it to shame me. It was almost predictable, almost comedic if the price of admission wasn't my sanity. I placed the phone face down on the table. "Let them talk," Ethan murmured. "BMI weren't there. They don't know what actually happened." "They don't want to know," I corrected. "They want to believe the version that makes my parents look like victims." He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You're not wrong, but you still did the right thing." I leaned into him, letting the weight of the day rest against someone who wouldn't twist it into guilt. Deep down, though, I knew the hardest blow hadn't landed yet. My parents always escalated. They didn't retreat. They regrouped. Sure enough, the next morning delivered the next strike. A text from Mom, "We need to talk." Just 3 words, innocent to a stranger, loaded to me. I didn't reply. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Dad, this time. You owe us a conversation." Then, ignoring us is childish. Then, you will regret pushing us away. Ethan watched my reactions with quiet intent. "You don't have to answer," he reminded me gently. But I didn't answer because I genuinely didn't know what else to say. How many different ways could I repeat the same boundary before it became a shout into a void? Noon arrived, and then my phone rang. My mother's name glowing on the screen like a warning flare. I let it ring out. A voicemail popped up. I didn't want to play it at first, but something in me said I needed to hear exactly where they were going next. I pressed play. "Nora," my mother's voice began, trembling with an artificial fragility she'd perfected over years. "I can't believe you would treat your own family like criminals. Your father hasn't slept. I've been crying nonstop. You humiliated us, your parents, to strangers. What kind of daughter calls the police on her own family? Where did we go wrong with you?" Ethan heard the message too. He whispered, "She's not crying, she's performing." The voicemail continued, "All your life we supported you. All your life we helped you. And this is how you repay us? You always were ungrateful, always selfish, always difficult. We are heartbroken, Nora, truly heartbroken. Then, the kicker, come fix this before it's too late." I ended the message and set the phone down slowly. Ethan reached for my hand. "You don't believe any of that, right?" "I don't," I said. But I also knew this was only the opening act. My parents had one more move they hadn't played yet, and they played it the very next day. I was in my studio sanding down a live edge walnut slab when my phone started vibrating, with notification after notification, dozens of them. I didn't check until the 23rd ding. When I did, my chest hollowed. My parents had turned to Facebook and posted a long, emotional, manipulative essay claiming I had abandoned them in their hour of need, coldly refused them shelter, and turned the authorities against them. They painted themselves as elderly victims. They conveniently left out every detail of giving Derek $650,000, 0 cents. They conveniently forgot to mention the lease, the trespassing, the screaming, the manipulation, and the comments. Good God, the comments. "She should be ashamed. Oh, what a horrible daughter. This generation has no loyalty. Your daughter sounds selfish. You deserve better." Not one person asked for facts, not one person questioned the story, because guilt spreads faster than truth when it's dressed in parental martyrdom. I felt something inside me tighten, an old wound reopening, but before it could spiral, Ethan stepped forward, took the phone from my hand, and said softly, "Read this later, after you remember who you actually are." That sentence alone almost made me break. Ethan guided me to the sofa, sat with me, and didn't say anything for a full minute. Just let me breathe. Then he said, "You have a right to protect your home, your tenants, your pregnancy, your peace. And you don't have to defend that to people who don't want to understand." His voice was calm but steady, like a grounding anchor. "You didn't humiliate your parents," he continued. "You held them accountable." Slowly, the tightness in my chest eased. Just a little. But enough. I leaned against him, and for the first time since the confrontation at the rental house, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Vindication. Because they were losing control. Their story didn't match the facts I sent the family. Their narrative didn't match the police report. They were scrambling, and when people are scrambling, they make mistakes. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, a message from my cousin Maria, the only relative who had stayed neutral through all this. "Call me," it read. I stepped outside onto the porch and dialed. "Nora," Maria began, hesitant. "I thought you should know. Your parents are planning something." My stomach tightened. "Planning what?" "They're telling people they're going to force a family meeting at your place. Dad told Uncle Ron we'll show up and she'll have to talk to us." A cold wave moved through me. Because this wasn't just guilt or emotional pressure or Facebook theatrics. This was premeditated escalation. Ethan saw my expression when I walked back inside. "What's wrong?" I swallowed. "They're planning to come here." His jaw clenched instantly. "Not a chance." I nodded. "It won't happen." But I knew what the next week would bring. The confrontation that would finally break everything open. The moment the family patriarch and matriarch realized I was no longer the daughter they could steamroll into obedience. And I could already feel it building. Tension, pressure, the shift in the air before something snaps. The moment a lifelong dynamic cracks and the truth finally bleeds out. It was coming, and I was finally ready for it. The warning from Maria didn't leave my mind for the rest of the night. It sat there in my chest like a ticking device, steady, inevitable, waiting for the hour it would detonate. My parents weren't passive people. They didn't wait their turn, they didn't cool off, they charged even when they were wrong, even when the whole world told them to stop. So the idea that they were planning to force a family meeting wasn't a rumor. It was a countdown. I woke the next morning before the sun. Ethan was still asleep, his hand resting protectively over my hip, the quiet hum of the house, the only sound between us. Usually that stillness calmed me. Today it felt like the eye of a storm. I slipped out of bed slowly and padded to the kitchen, the floor cool beneath my feet. I brewed coffee just to hold the warmth. Even if the taste turned bitter in my mouth, the house was quiet, but my thoughts weren't. Every version of what if played in my mind like unwelcome guests. What if they show up while I'm alone? What if they bring other relatives? What if they don't leave? But the strongest, most painful question was one I didn't want to admit. What if they never change? I hadn't asked for much, just a boundary, a basic boundary. Don't trespass. Don't invade my tenant's home. Don't treat my house like a safety net for your financial disasters. But the moment I enforced it, I became the villain. A pregnant daughter who dared to protect her own life from the people who claimed to love her. The weight of it settled deep, heavy, suffocating, familiar. I stared out the kitchen window, watching the early light spread across our backyard, softening the edges of the world. For a moment, I wondered if I was being too harsh, if maybe I could have handled it differently, if maybe I should have let them stay. But the moment those thoughts surfaced, so did the memory of Jake's trembling voice. There are people at the door saying they're moving in. The pounding on the rental house, the suitcases, the entitlement, the months of guilt, the years of being told to be understanding. I exhaled slowly. No, I wasn't wrong. They were. Ethan joined me not long after, his hair tousled, his voice still heavy with sleep. "You're up early," he murmured. I nodded. My brain wouldn't shut off. He stepped beside me and kissed my temple. "They're not coming today." "You don't know that." "I know they won't catch you off guard again." He glanced at the security monitor, the ring feed glowing softly on the counter. "You're prepared this time." The day passed quietly, too quietly, like the silence before a verdict. I checked the cameras more times than I'd admit. Ethan pretended not to notice. By evening, nothing had happened. No call, no message, no surprise appearance. A false sense of relief tried creeping in, but deep down I knew better. My parents weren't impulsive, they were calculated. They waited for maximum impact, and I found out exactly what that meant the very next morning. I had just stepped out of the shower when Ethan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Nora, don't panic, but come here." My heart lurched. I wrapped a towel around myself and hurried to the living room. He pointed at the Ring camera feed, and there they were, my parents, standing on the porch, not alone, with them, Uncle Ron, Aunt Patricia, and my grandmother's sister, who hadn't spoken to me in 5 years but apparently found her voice for a confrontation. "They brought reinforcements," Ethan muttered dryly. My breath caught in my throat. My mother was holding a cake box. My father had a folder under his arm, the kind he used during serious conversations. They weren't here to talk. They were here to overwhelm, to corner, to perform, and they'd brought an audience. I watched the footage in stunned silence. Mom knocked gently at first. "Sweetheart, we brought something for you, a peace offering." Dad knocked harder. "We're here to settle this like adults." Patricia chimed in loudly, loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. "We're not leaving until we fix this family." I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. Ethan touched my back gently. "What do you want to do?" "They want me to open the door," I whispered. "That's why they brought everyone, so I'd be too embarrassed not to," he nodded. "So don't open it." I swallowed. "They'll just stay. All of them." "Then let them look ridiculous on camera," he said calmly. "You told them your boundary. They chose to ignore it." I took a breath, then another, letting his words settle into my bones. I walked closer to the screen and looked directly at their faces frozen in the feed, my mother with her carefully trembling expression, my father with his authoritative stance, the relatives positioned behind them like witnesses waiting for a confession. For years, that image would have broken me, but not today. I pressed the microphone button on the Ring app. My voice came out steady, cool, controlled. "You need to leave." The porch went still. My mother leaned into the camera. "Honey, please, we just want to talk." "You can schedule a conversation through email," I replied. "You don't get to show up unannounced with half the family expecting access to my home." Dad straightened. "This is immature, Nora. We are trying to resolve things." "No," I said firmly. "You're trying to corner me. You didn't respect my boundary. You didn't respect the police warning. You didn't respect the lead. And now you're disrespecting my home." Patricia opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "This is trespassing." Dad scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." "The last officer didn't think it was dramatic," I replied, "and I can call again." Mom's face twisted. "You would call the police on your own family again?" "Yes," I said softly. "Every single time you show up here without permission." The silence that followed was heavy, dense, suffocating, and deeply satisfying. But Dad wasn't done. He lifted the folder dramatically. "We brought paperwork. You need to see this." "Slide it under the door," I said. He froze. "No." "Then it's not urgent." Mom tried again, her voice cracking. "Nora, we need somewhere to go." There it was. The truth. Not the apology, not the accountability, not the self-awareness, the need, the dependency. The expectation, the belief that my home existed to bail them out of their own choices. "You have an apartment," I reminded them. "A cramped, awful apartment," Patricia snapped. "And whose fault is that?" I said. Dad stepped forward. "You can't keep punishing us." "I'm not punishing you," I replied. "I'm protecting myself." The porch quieted, a long moment passed, and then the officer arrived. The same one from last time. "Ma'am, sir," he said calmly, "you need to leave the property, now." Dad turned slowly, his face darkening. "We are her parents." The officer didn't flinch. "You've been warned before. Another incident will result in further action." My mother's voice broke into real sobs this time. Not performance, but humiliation. She grabbed Dad's arm. "Let's go." He didn't move, but the officer did. And eventually, slowly, painfully, they retreated down the porch steps. Not one relative stepped forward to defend them now, because nothing is more embarrassing than entitlement denied an audience. Ethan exhaled beside me, shoulders relaxing for the first time since they appeared. I closed the app and leaned into him. Not triumphant, not victorious, just exhausted, but steady, because for the first time in my life, my no had weight. My boundary had power, and the people who tried to bulldoze it were finally learning that I wasn't the daughter they could guilt into submission anymore. I was someone else now. Someone stronger, someone self-made, someone building a new life, one they no longer controlled. The storm hadn't passed yet, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready. 2 days passed after the confrontation, and the quiet inside our home was so complete it almost felt staged, like life had pressed pause just to let me catch up. Ethan watched me closely as if waiting for the next blow, the next phone call, the next escalation, but nothing came. No messages, no trespassing, no group chats exploding at dawn. My mother didn't cry into my voicemail. My father didn't bark orders through missed calls. Derek didn't rage text me about family duty or being flexible. The world had gone silent. And silence, when it comes from people who thrive on control, is never peace. It's planning. On the third night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the baby monitor even though the nursery was still empty. Ethan shifted beside me. "You're thinking too loudly," he murmured. I huffed a quiet breath. "They're waiting. They're regrouping." "Let them," he said. "Your boundaries aren't going anywhere." I wanted to believe him. But old habits linger. For 30 years, my parents trained me to brace for the emotional whiplash that followed any moment I dared to stand up for myself. Punishment disguised as disappointment. Control disguised as concern. Guilt disguised as love. So when the doorbell rang the next morning, sharp, urgent, repeated, I felt my chest tighten. Ethan met my eyes. "Stay here. I've got it." But I shook my head. "No, I need to see." We walked to the hallway monitor together, expecting to see my parents again, maybe dragging more relatives like some kind of emotional SWAT team. But it wasn't them. It was Derek. Alone. And for the first time in years, he didn't look smug, cocky, or casually entitled. He looked desperate, pale, sleep-deprived, suit wrinkled. The kind of shaken a man becomes when the world he built on sand finally collapses. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in front of the door like a man rehearsing a confession he never wanted to make. Ethan glanced at me. "What do you want to do?" "I'll speak to him," I said. Ethan's brow lifted. "Through the door?" I nodded, always. I pressed the intercom. "What do you want, Derek?" He stopped pacing instantly, turning toward the camera with a mix of relief and frustration. "Nora, thank God, please, just open the door." "No, it's freezing out here," he protested, breath visible in the morning air. "Then wear a coat next time," he exhaled sharply. "Okay, you're angry, I get it, but can we just talk?" "Please, talk," I said flatly. Derek shifted from foot to foot. "I need your help." That sentence, those 4 words, summed up our entire sibling relationship. I waited, letting the silence push him forward. "The penthouse," he started, voice faltering. I lost it. I stayed still, unmoved. Derek continued, words tumbling now. "The loan didn't go through. They denied it. Brittany's parents wouldn't co-sign. The wedding venue needs a deposit we don't have. The mortgage company took too long. The seller pulled out. I have nothing lined up, no backup plan." He scrubbed his face. "And Mom and Dad, they're losing it." I didn't answer. He took that as permission to keep going. "They're blaming each other. They're blaming me. They're blaming you. They think you could have prevented all this. They think you should have helped." A humorless laugh escaped me. "Of course they do." Derek swallowed. "And I'm in a mess, a real mess. I don't have money. I don't have a place for us to stay a long term. I don't know what to do." He took a step closer to the camera. "Can you help me?" "Help you with what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. His shoulders sagged. "Money. A loan. Just until we figure things out. Just 12,000. Or maybe 15. I almost laughed, almost. "No." Derek flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Nora, come on." "No," I repeated. "I can't bail you out of something you willingly created." His features tightened. "You think I wanted this? You think I asked Mom and Dad to give me the money?" I raised an eyebrow he couldn't see. "Did you refuse it?" He froze. And that was answer enough. I leaned my head against the wall beside the intercom, letting the truth settle fully and cleanly in my chest. Derek, like my parents, didn't see the difference between help and rescue, between fairness and favoritism, between responsibility and dependence. "You always had them," I said quietly. "Their money, their time, their energy, their sacrifices, everything. And you blew it." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "I do," I answered softly. "More than you think." Derek blinked rapidly, frustration building like a storm. "Mom is crying non-stop because she gave away her future. Dad is furious because he made a reckless decision. They're going to lose everything. Because they gambled everything," I finished. Derek stared at the door, at the camera, at the space where he believed the access point to my life should still be. "So that's it?" he said. "You're just done with them?" "No," I replied. "I'm done letting them treat my life like an extension of theirs." He shook his head. "You're being cold." "No," I said, feeling the calm truth settle deep inside me. I'm being clear. Derek paced again, shoving his hands into his pockets. You know what they're saying, right? I don't care. They think success made you selfish. Success made me self-sufficient, I corrected. And that scares them. Derek quieted. For the first time, he looked something he'd never looked in his entire life. Small, deflated, nervous. What am I supposed to do? He whispered. And despite everything, the years of favoritism, the entitlement, the manipulation, I felt something shift, something unexpected. Sympathy. But sympathy wasn't the same as sacrifice. You're supposed to grow up, I said gently. Find a job. Create stability. Stop relying on our parents who can't even support themselves. Learn how to stand without expecting someone else to catch you. He was silent. Completely silent. Then he whispered, I thought you'd always be there for us. I was, I replied. For years. A beat, a breath, a truth. But being there doesn't mean letting you destroy my life to fix yours. Derek's eyes glistened, whether from anger or pain, I couldn't tell, maybe both. So you're really not giving us anything? No. Not even letting them stay? No, not even a little, not ever, I said, steady as stone. He exhaled shakily. They're going to hate you for this. Then they hate a boundary, I replied, not me. He stepped back, defeated, unraveling. This isn't you, he murmured. You've changed. I had to. I said, because no one else in this family ever did. He stared at the door for a long moment, as if trying to understand the version of me he'd never bothered to meet. Then he turned and walked away, not with anger, not with entitlement, but with something closer to reality for the first time in his life. When he disappeared down the driveway, Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting gently on my shoulder. You did the right thing, he whispered. I nodded slowly. I know. But inside, a truth I hadn't expected echoed through me. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of the fallout, and fallout always lands hardest on the people who refuse to bend. The fallout didn't arrive with sirens or screaming phone calls this time. It came in waves of quiet information, the kind that doesn't knock on the door but slips into your inbox like a cold draft. The first came from Maria, my cousin, the only person in the entire extended family who paused long enough to ask, what actually happened, instead of just forwarding the version they liked better. She called that afternoon, her voice cautious, like she was stepping onto a floor she wasn't sure would hold. Hey, she said, I know things are complicated, but I thought you should know where they ended up. I leaned against the kitchen counter, one hand resting instinctively on my belly. Where who ended up? I asked, though I already knew. Your parents, she said. They finally signed a lease. 1 bedroom, edge of town, no yard, no guest room, tiny kitchen. They were hoping for something nicer, but... She trailed off. I didn't say anything. She continued softly. They're saying you abandoned them. You know, of course they... But, she added quickly, they also let slip what they did. Selling the house, giving Derek everything, showing up at your rental like they had a right to it. When Aunt Linda heard the whole story, she went quiet. No rallying speech, no guilt lecture, just quiet. Silence when it comes from professional guilt trippers is louder than any accusation. It means reality finally pierced the fantasy. You know you're not crazy, right? Maria said suddenly. What you did? Legal, reasonable, sane. They were way out of line. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the words land. It's disturbing how much validation can still soothe you, even after you've already chosen your path. Thanks, I murmured. I didn't know how bad it was until I heard their side, she admitted. They made it sound like you slammed the door on them while they were sleeping on the street. But when I asked about the $650,000 they gave Derek, your rental, your pregnancy, the tenants, They glossed over all of it. That's when I knew something was off. My grip tightened around the phone. "What did you say?" "I told them," she replied calmly, "that they created their own emergency and that if they wanted sympathy, they needed to tell the whole story, not just the part that made them look like victims." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "You're gonna get more quiet now," she warned. "Less yelling, more distance. They're embarrassed. They don't know how to spin this without someone pointing out the missing pieces." "Good," I said, and I meant it. Because sometimes the most merciful thing you can give people who thrive on drama is nothing to react to. No fuel, no stage, no applause. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and reread the draft my attorney had sent, a formal cease and desist letter addressed to my parents, detailing the trespassing at my rental, their uninvited appearance at my home, and the persistent boundary violations. The language was sterile, precise, stripped of emotion, in a way that actually made the whole thing feel heavier. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge. It was documentation. A line carved into the legal record saying, "This is where I stop absorbing other people's chaos." Ethan sat beside me, reading over my shoulder. "Are you sure you want to send it?" he asked quietly. I stared at the cursor blinking at the bottom of the screen, that tiny, pulsing reminder that I still had a choice. "Yes," I said. "I think I've spent enough years being unclear." He nodded, no argument, just support, and I clicked send. Somewhere in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, an envelope would arrive in a few days that said in black and white legalese what I'd been trying to say in shaky phone calls for years. My life is not your safety net. My home is not your entitlement. My stability is not your reward for bad decisions. The days that followed felt strangely normal. I went back to the workshop. The scent of sawdust and varnish wrapped itself around me like an old, steady friend. Jake sent me a picture of the garden he and Amanda planted in the Lakewood backyard. Rows of tomatoes, herbs, a tiny patch of wildflowers. "We'll name this corner Nora's Sanctuary, if that's not too weird." It was perfect. A reminder that not everyone saw me as a resource to be consumed. Some people saw me as a person worth protecting. Back at home, Ethan and I spent evenings in the nursery, painting the walls a soft, muted sage. We assembled the crib slowly, laughing when we misread the instructions and had to take it apart twice. He'd hold up tiny onesies and ask, "Too optimistic to buy this newborn size?" And I'd feel my chest ache in a good way for once, not from heartbreak, but from the overwhelming reality that we were building something stable and safe, on purpose, not because we were lucky, because we chose it. Every so often, the past knocked. Derek left a voicemail one night that started with fake concern and ended with a veiled threat. "Mom's not eating," he said. "Dad's blood pressure is up. You know if anything happens, the family will blame you, right?" I deleted it without finishing, because here's the truth nobody tells you. The moment you stop accepting emotional blackmail, it doesn't magically disappear. It just loses its audience. And once there's no audience, it stops being power and starts being noise. My mother tried a different tactic. A long email, paragraphs of wordy grief and half apologies. "We know we may have overreacted," she wrote, as if demanding access to my property and harassing my tenants was a mild overstep. She sprinkled in sentences like, "We only wanted to be close to you and the baby," and "We don't understand why you're freezing out your own family." The old me would have read that email 3 times, twisting myself into shapes to see how I could have phrased things better, softer, more forgiving. The current me read it once, recognized the absence of any real accountability, and closed the tab. No response, no long explanation, no carefully composed essay about boundaries and consequences, just nothing. Because sometimes silence is not cruelty. It's refusal to relitigate what you've already made clear. People like my parents weren't confused. They were hoping to rewind. Ethan noticed the shift in me even before I did. One evening, as we sat on the nursery floor surrounded by baby books and unopened boxes, he said, "You know what's different?" I looked up. "What? You're not bracing anymore." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He rested his elbows on his knees. "When we first started this whole mess, you were always waiting for the next call, the next guilt trip, the next crisis you'd feel obligated to fix. You'd stand in the kitchen like someone listening for incoming artillery. Now, you're just here, present, making choices for us, not for them." I let his words sink in. He was right. I wasn't scanning my phone every 5 minutes. I wasn't rehearsing explanations in my head. I wasn't pre-writing apologies for boundaries I was allowed to have. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't living reactively. I was living intentionally. And that's when it hit me. The most powerful part of this entire story wasn't that I'd stopped my parents from invading my home. It was that I'd stopped them from renting space inside my head. That's a kind of eviction too, the emotional kind. And maybe it's the one that matters most. The cease and desist letter worked exactly as it was designed to. According to Maria, my parents went pale when they read it. My father sputtered about disrespect and after everything we've done, but he didn't show up at my door again. My mother cried, I'm sure. She told relatives they had no choice but to back away from me, spinning it as if they were the ones taking moral high ground. Fine, let them have their story. I had the truth. Meanwhile, life crept forward in small, ordinary ways that felt miraculous, simply because they were drama-free. The rental stayed occupied, the mortgage stayed paid. The baby's kicks grew stronger. My hands stayed busy crafting tables and shelves and beds for other families who would fill them with memories built on something less fragile than obligation. Guilt didn't vanish. It still tapped on my shoulder sometimes, especially late at night. Little whispers like, "What if they get sick?" Or "What if your child grows up and sees you as cold?" But then another voice, the one I've spent the last year learning to trust, would answer back, steady and unflinching. Protecting your child from generational dysfunction isn't cruelty, it's love. Choosing not to sacrifice your safety for someone else's bad planning isn't selfish, it's wise. Refusing to confuse access with love isn't betrayal, it's clarity. And clarity, once you've tasted it, is something you don't willingly give back. I drove to my parents' new apartment 2 weeks later, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed closure before the baby arrived. Ethan stayed in the car, giving me space, though his presence behind the wheel felt like a quiet reminder that whatever happened next, I wasn't walking into it alone. Their building was small, old, the kind with thin walls and a lobby that smelled faintly of bleach and resigned living. When Mom opened the door, she froze, like someone seeing a ghost she wasn't ready for. Dad stood behind her, thinner somehow, shoulders less proud, eyes less sharp. I didn't step inside. I stayed in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other resting on my stomach. Mom broke first. "Nora, honey," she whispered, voice trembling like she wanted to step forward, but wasn't sure she had permission. Can we talk?" Dad cleared his throat, but it wasn't the authoritative sound he'd always used to silence rooms. It was fragile, hesitant, almost human. "We know things got out of hand." I didn't smile. I didn't soften. I kept my voice steady because this moment demanded clarity, not comfort. "They didn't get out of hand. You forced them out of hand." Mom blinked hard, tears welling. "We were desperate. Derek." I held up a hand. "This isn't about Derek." Dad looked down. "We made mistakes." "No," I corrected. "You made choices, repeatedly, consistently, and every choice said the same thing. My comfort was optional. My boundaries were negotiable. My home was expendable. My pregnancy was irrelevant. And my life," I paused, letting the weight settle, "only mattered when it benefited you." Mom covered her mouth, crying, but there was no manipulation in it this time. It was grief, real grief. Grief for the version of me they thought they still controlled. "We were wrong," she whispered. "We relied on you too much." "You didn't rely on me," I said. "You used me," Dad flinched, but didn't argue. That was new. "We can do better," he said softly. "We want to. I hope you do," I replied. "But let me be clear. There's no going back to the old dynamic. Not now, not ever." They both nodded slowly, absorbing the new reality like a bitter pill they finally realized they couldn't refuse. I continued, my voice firm but not cruel. "If you want to be in this baby's life, your place in my life has to change. Permanently. That means respecting boundaries, respecting my decisions, respecting my home, and respecting that no is a full sentence." Mom's shoulders shook. "We can do that. We will." Dad exhaled, long and tired. "We lost ourselves in the panic. We thought Derek needed us more." "He doesn't," I said plainly. "Not anymore." Dad nodded once, slowly. "We know." I stepped back from the doorway. "We'll try again, carefully, slowly, and only when I'm ready." Mom nodded through tears. "Thank you." Dad whispered, "Thank you, Nora," like he was genuinely unsure he deserved the chance. I walked away without hugging them, without promising anything more, without offering comfort I didn't owe, and for once, they didn't demand it. They let me go. When I got back to the car, Ethan reached for my hand. "You okay?" I looked out the window as the building shrank behind us. "Yeah," I said softly. "For the first time, yeah." The baby kicked gently beneath my palm as if reminding me why every hard decision had mattered. A new family was beginning, one built on respect, not expectations. One built on boundaries, not guilt. One built on love, not obligation. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter who had to be understanding. I was the woman who finally understood her worth. And I wasn't shrinking anymore. The weeks that followed felt like walking out of a storm I didn't realize had soaked me for years. The silence in my phone wasn't threatening anymore. It was peaceful, earned, deserved. Boundaries weren't walls keeping people out. They were doors with locks only I held the key to. And for once, no one was trying to break them down. My parents stayed quiet, not out of withdrawal, but respect. Real respect. They sent short, cautious messages checking on my pregnancy. No pressure, no guilt, no demands, just space. For the first time in my life, space felt like love instead of punishment. One morning, I woke with a sudden urge to finish the nursery. Ethan laughed softly as I dragged him into the room, my energy fueling the entire house. We spent hours assembling the crib, smoothing the bedding, hanging the wooden name sign I carved myself, Liam, because our son deserved a name that felt strong without being heavy. When the last screw tightened, I stood back, hand on my stomach. "I want him to grow up knowing love, not obligation," I whispered. Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind. "He will," he murmured, "because he has you." Later that night, we sat on the floor eating takeout, the nursery glowing softly in the lamplight. My mind replayed the last few months, the pounding on the tenant's door, the police car lights, the group chat ambushes, the slow unraveling of old roles. I realized something huge. What I'd done wasn't just protect my home. I'd rewritten my entire family script. I'd ended a generational pattern of daughters being the safety net and sons being the investment. I'd ended the belief that sacrifice was the same as love. I'd ended the story that said parents can do anything and still expect unconditional access to their adult children's lives. I hadn't broken the family. I had broken the dysfunction. The next day, unexpectedly, I received a text from my mom. A picture. A small apartment living room with thrifted furniture, simple curtains, and a tiny potted plant in the corner. "We're settling in," her message read. It's not what we planned, but it's ours, and we're trying. A second text followed. We love you. We just didn't know how to show it without repeating what we learned. We're learning now. I stared at the screen for a long time, my chest tight. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with something gentler, cautious forgiveness. Growth wasn't immediate, it rarely is, but it was happening. A month later, Ethan drove me to a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the mountains. Not for romance, though he always delivered that without trying, but because my doctor told me to move gently, breathe deeply, and find stillness before the baby arrived. The evening air was cool. I watched the sun dip behind the Rockies, painting the sky in apricot and gold. Do you ever think, Ethan asked, that all of this, everything you fought for, was preparing you to be the mother you needed growing up? The words hit so deeply I couldn't speak. I looked at my belly, at the life moving inside me, at the future I'd protected like a warrior. Yeah, I whispered, I think it was. The night Liam was born, I held him against my chest, tiny and warm and perfect, and the room fell away. There was no past, no noise, no guilt, no expectations, just this small soul who had no idea how many battles had been fought to make his world soft. My parents visited a week later. They stood at the doorway as if crossing a border they now respected. Mom's eyes filled when she saw Liam. Dad's voice cracked when he asked if he could hold him. I nodded, because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing what comes next. Dad held Liam gently, like something precious instead of something owed. He's beautiful, Nora, he whispered. You're doing everything right. Mom brushed my arm. Thank you for giving us another chance. I didn't say, you're welcome. I didn't say, it's okay. I simply said, we move forward from here. And for once they both nodded without arguing. That night, after they left, I rocked Liam to sleep while moonlight pooled on the nursery floor. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who over-explained, over-apologized, and over-gave, and I held my son closer. Whispering a promise he grew up hearing his whole life, you will never shrink to make others comfortable. Not while I'm your mother. As Liam slept peacefully in my arms, I finally understood something profound, something I want every person watching to hear. You are allowed to protect the life you're building even from the people who built you. Boundaries aren't betrayal, they're oxygen. And the moment you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, the world shifts in the most extraordinary ways. I kissed Liam's forehead, breathed in his baby-soft scent, and felt a calm settle into my bones. This was my family now, my home, my rules, my peace, and no one ever again would invade it. As the screen fades, I want you to tell me something in the comments. What boundary did you grow up being afraid to set, and when did you finally draw the line? And if this story hit home for you, subscribe, because your voice, your healing, your courage deserve a place to grow.